There are a lot of cargo electric bikes on the market, and I bet you haven't seen one that looks like this. It's from a brand called Gnargo. Each one is handmade. Yes, handmade in the United States. In this full review, first I'll talk about how they accomplish making these in the United States. Then we'll get into a walk around. I'll tell you about all the components. Then, yes, some first-person riding footage with cargo. And finally, some third-person riding footage where I'll give you the pros and cons of a cargo electric bike that looks like this. But first, let's take a closer look. See, I told you you haven't seen anything that looks like this. A little bit of a background. We've been living for a month down here in Bentonville, Arkansas, and I ran into this company. We love cargo electric bikes. I've reviewed a ton on the channel, but I haven't reviewed anything quite like this. And so to start off with, I was impressed firstly by the design. All your cargo is up front. If you have kids, they're up front. It's so much better to interact with them. But then as I dug in deeper, I learned that all of these bikes are made up of old vintage steel bikes. So beneath this nice paint job, it might be a Trek, Bianchi, Giant, who knows? Sometimes when brands stamp their logo into the metal, you can actually tell where the frame came from. And so basically what they're doing is they're leaving the rear triangle, reinforcing the dropouts in the rear, cutting off the head tube. So this is the original bike frame. And then they make it longer into a cargo electric bike. I'll give you an up-close look at the steering in a minute. So they're buying an old frame that would otherwise be going in the trash, but then beyond that, to help give back, they're actually putting 2 bikes on the road with a local nonprofit. So it's super awesome. 1 old frame turns into 3 bikes, 1 in electric and 2 for the community. And if you want to learn more about some of those finer details, check out the company tour we did with the co-founder, Zach. But next, let's dive into the bike. So first off, you can test ride here if you happen to be in Bentonville, Arkansas, but they also ship their bikes in repurposed boxes, another cool thing. And we talked with the company, and viewers of this video can get free shipping on their cargo Gnargo electric bike. So check out the description for details on that. What you're looking at here is the classic version. They also have a schoolie and a loop loader. So the schoolie is going to be the smallest form factor. It has a smaller rack, but then if you want to step up from there a little bit, you can get the loop loader. Now the classic, this is going to be my choice just because it offers so much storage. And the current pricing we'll put on the screen of the other 2 models, but the classic starts at $3,500. And another cool thing, because they're using old frames, you can get whatever size you want. This is a size large. You can also get a mid-step, though they are a little bit more rare with some of those early bike models. And of course, the size large is going to fit me, a 6-foot tall rider, just perfectly. I'm not even going to venture a guess at the weight of this bike, but suffice to say, it's really heavy, 80, 90 pounds. We'll put it on the screen. But here's the thing, these bikes are made for cargo. I asked the co-founder the weight capacity of this, and he said it's really a limitation of the front wheel. They've never had a frame brake, and they've loaded the front with up to 600 pounds. Not that they recommend it, but it's good to know that you can put a ton of cargo up front. I've been riding with our 2 kids. Let's start with the front rack. First, we have the webbing, which you can customize to a number of different colors to your liking. Of course, you can pick the paint color as well. These bars are an optional accessory, a necessity if you have kids like I do. But what I thought was really cool is they have an option where you can put a Thule, maxi window in the front here so your child faces you. Again, you can customize this cargo electric bike however you want because, again, it's handmade here in the United States. Also welded to the front rack are these attachment points so you can use straps to tie down any cargo. Moving to the tires, a front Maxxis tire. This is 20 by 2.1 inches wide, comes with a street tread. And in the rear, you get a larger wheel size. These are Schwalbe Marathon Plus mountain bike tires, though most often they're coming with a Schwalbe city tire. They use a security bolt to attach the front wheel, And they're using RSX hydraulic disc brakes paired with massive 203 millimeter rotors, both in the front and in the rear. Because this is an elongated cargo electric bike, they need a steering linkage. That's what this is, and the length differs depending on the model. So this is how it looks, and it's actually very easy to maneuver. You'd be surprised. Moving to the cockpit, you have locking grips on both sides. Standard is a right-hand thumb throttle, and we have Shimano's 7-speed trigger shifter on the right. RSX hydraulic disc brake levers complete with motor cutoffs, and a control pad on the left with a center-mounted LCD display. The lights can be turned on by holding pedal assist up, and there's a nice bright light beneath the front rack here. And rear lights as well, much more visible at night. I actually like how big they are, not brake actuated though. And on this color LCD display, we have current time, battery capacity, complete with voltage, current speed front and center, wattage going to the motor, of course pedal assist, 1 through 5. On the bottom, odometer and ride time. Hitting the middle button will change what's displayed there. And what's nice is you can charge your phone. There's a USB-A port beneath the display. There's a nice Gnargo custom badge up front and branded components above the head tube as well. Controller mounted right here, and it's a big one. This is a powerful motor. We'll get into that. Right now, all the cable is run externally, but they're working on having some internal routing, so I think that'll clean things up. And then you have the battery. There's an on-off switch. Charge port right here comes with a 2-amp charger. And this battery is 48 volt, 16 amp hours. The battery is UL certified, and this is a standard Shark style battery, so very easy to replace this battery if you needed to in the future. You could even step up the capacity if you wanted to. The motor is engaged with a cadence sensor. It is an external one right here that reads the magnets, and they're proud of this one, and I have to give them credit for it because this is an awesome kickstand. It's actually made in Italy, and just check out how wide it is. This bike is going nowhere. And so how it works on these cargo electric bikes is you simply put your foot in the front and rock it forward, nice and easy. And to put the kickstand down, just step on it and rock the bike backwards. The saddle is from WTB. It's called the Volt narrow saddle, more road inspired. And then we have a rear rack. It has a 25 kilogram capacity, around 50 pounds. But what I think is most interesting is because this is a cargo electric bike, I would personally opt for a welded rear rack on here, which they can do, which is awesome. You can have kids up front or maybe put a kid in the rear if you want to. Totally up to you, completely customized. They told me that they made one custom for a customer that wanted to mount his skateboard in the rear. And again, the rotor, huge, but not quite as huge as this motor. The motor cable runs on this side. All right, check this motor out. Does it look different than most hub motors that I feature on the channel? It should, because this is a direct drive motor, and that choice was intentional. And one of the main reasons for that is these motors should last forever, thousands and thousands of miles, but also they're extremely quiet. You can barely even hear it. And the motor is 750 watts nominal, 1,250 watts of peak power. And they promised me it still has a ton of torque, so stay tuned for the first person riding footage. We'll go up a hill on throttle only while loaded. There's a torque arm here that's part of the reinforcement that they do in the rear of the bike. Gearing is 11 to 28 teeth in the rear. They're using Shimano Altus for the derailleur. Again, 7 speeds. And up front is a 42 tooth front chainring. And the pedals are large platform plastic pedals. Of course, your bottle cage bosses, that's going to depend on the frame you get, but this bike has 2 right here. So that is the Gnargo Classic, but the fun of this electric bike is actually riding it. So let's get into some first-person riding footage. All right, let's get started with the first-person riding footage. It doesn't take a lot to get the kids excited about going for a ride on this bike. Do you find that it's fun to ride on the Gnargo, Lenny? Yes. All right. Yeah. We've been having tons of fun on this bike. Have I mentioned how much I love Bentonville? It's just been great around here. All right, so I wanted to do this test with some cargo up front, aka the kids, because more than likely, if you're buying this bike, you're going to load it at least at some point. And I recently heard from someone, and his thought was that basically everyone's bike at some point is going to be somewhat of a cargo e-bike, whether maybe it's a utility bike. And that's because if you're replacing car trips, people don't drive cars with no trunk. So it just makes sense to have that utility. And I just thought that was a great way of putting it. So shout out to the YouTube channel Propel. I think firstly, it would be interesting to just show you how this turns. I'm on a quiet street here. And I have to say, it seems more stable. I think I need to test it back to back. But having the kids up front does seem more stable than having them towards the rear. I'm not sure if it's the wider platform or just how that changes a little bit the steering, but sometimes on the long tail cargo e-bikes, because it's a narrow rail, if the kids are moving around, you can feel it a little bit more. So maybe that feels a little bit more tippy, but I have to say, these handle a lot more easy than they otherwise look, thanks to that linkage down there. And so they're very nimble, especially with the narrower tires. And riding position wise, they basically have these wide kind of mountain bike handlebars. And of course, if you wanted to, you could bring them up closer to you if you wanted to. But it's more of a forward-leaning riding position, if you will. So this turns plenty tight. It's very impressive, actually. And remember, they do have the two other models that have a shorter wheelbase. So those will be even more nimble in, say, a city environment. All right, let's do our throttle only test. Remember, throttle on the right along with the gears. 3, 2, 1, throttle only. And it is a very gentle takeoff, which is nice. And you just can't even hear the motor. And there you go, 16, 17, 20 miles an hour. Not a problem on this bike. And they don't have this one capped, so it will go faster, though we have precious cargo. And one of the other things I'll just talk about, the hydraulic disc brakes with the massive 203 millimeter rotors are just fantastic. And another thing I've noticed, while this bike doesn't have front suspension, obviously, and you could add a suspension C-post, which I would if I owned one. Stay tuned, because in the third person riding footage, I'll talk a little bit more about how I would personally outfit one of these if I had one for everyday use. But even on going over grass and stuff, it's not that bad. I mean, certainly you need to be careful, but it's not as bad as you might otherwise expect. And I'm not sure why that is, but it's a nice and smooth ride. And after this, we're gonna get to our huge hill climb test. But just throttling right now, and this is a good preview of just how good this bike performs, especially being a direct drive motor. That's of course compared to a geared hub motor. They're significantly louder. Some of those can be super loud. You can hear them from super far away. And so if you want a quiet cargo e-bike, this is definitely an option. All right, let's go into pedal assist level 1. I'm in first gear. Now remember, it's a cadence sensor, so as long as my legs are spinning, I'm going to get power from the motor. It doesn't matter how much pressure I'm putting on. And in pedal assist level 1, they have this tuned in such a way that it's speed limited and you get very little assistance. It's like 50 watts. And I think the speed is even set at maybe 6 miles an hour. So just spinning my legs nice and easy and going 7, 8 miles an hour and just using 100 watts. So pedal assist level 1 is just going to be your nice and easy cruise, maybe in a very dense environment where you need to take a lot of sharp turns and there's a lot of people around, because after 7 miles an hour or so, you don't get any assistance, and that's because it's set to a current speed, which means that most of the time that we've been riding this bike around for the last week and a half or so is we've been in the higher pedal assist levels. So let's go into pedal assist level 2, and quite a big difference there. We'll shift up going down this slight hill. Really like the trigger shifters. That was a good choice. 5th gear, and it looks like the speed limit on pedal assist level 2 is maybe around 14 miles an hour or so, because the motor is cutting off, but we were getting a decent amount of motor power. So yeah, right around 15 miles an hour, and the motor will hold you at that very easily. All right, next, the pedal assist level that I've been spending a lot of time in, and that's pedal assist level 3, because it's a better cruising speed if you're on the Razorback Greenway here in Bentonville. And I haven't really even needed to go up into pedal assist level 4 or 5. Even on some of the hills, 3 is plenty of power. And as you'll see, we'll get up to speed here. 6th gear, we're already cruising at 18 miles an hour, which is getting close to the maximum of what I feel comfortable with the kids. There's 20 miles an hour. And so that's why I've been using pedal assist level 3 the most. All right, let's go into pedal assist level 4. Just to show you, but I'm not going to really go too much faster than 20 here. And yeah, 21 miles an hour. The motor is more than enough, but the bike also feels really stable at these high speeds. Of course, it's maybe something I'm a little bit more used to. And we're using about 900 watts. And so going up this hill, I think, yeah, if we go into pedal assist level 5, we'll get the maximum amount of power. So those higher pedal assist levels are going to only be reserved when you really want to get where you're going fast or you're going up hills. And as far as the kids are concerned, how do you guys like riding up there?
Good.
Do you like sitting in the front or back?
What?
In the front. Yeah. Show off a little bit more of the handling. I want to get up here on this sidewalk and yeah, just super easy. Very maneuverable. All right, with that, I think it's time to test out how this motor performs on a hill. And then after that, I'll give you my concluding thoughts as well as the pros and cons on the Gnargo Classic.
Welcome to the hill contest.
All right, let's see what this direct drive motor can do. This hill is absolutely massive. It is a worst case scenario. And we are just going to go into pedal assist level 5. And I imagine I will need to shift down, but just going to provide a little bit of help to the motor. And I am in 1st gear, pedal assist level 5. And I wouldn't even say I'm putting in a lot of effort, just keeping a little bit of pressure on the pedals. And it's pegged at 1263 watts peak power. And can you hear that? Silence from this direct drive motor, which is something that the company really prioritized. They appreciate the quiet motor. And I mean, I can have a conversation with my kids. It's awesome that they're in front of me. And one of the ways that they kind of explain traditional cargo e-bikes, and what I mean by that is with the rack in the back, is that it's kind of the tail wagging the dog. And so this is just a much more better experience if you have kids. Perfect example here. We have a rad wagon coming up. Hello. And the kid is in the rear there. So it's much more easy to interact with your kids if they're in front. All right, and we made it up that hill. 1st gear, not putting in a ton of effort, totally doable. So I will say they succeeded on putting a very powerful motor on this electric bike. All right, with that, let's get into some 3rd-person riding footage. I'll give you my concluding thoughts on the Gnargo Classic Cargo Electric Bike. Riding cargo e-bikes around town always draws attention, but the Gnargo e-bikes take it to another level. They are real head turners. Its unique design stands out even among other front loaders like an Urban Arrow. At $34.95, the price might seem steep to those new to e-bikes or cargo e-bikes, but do me a favor, go to Google and search for a front load cargo e-bike, and that will reveal that this is actually a great deal. And yes, if your sole aim is to haul cargo, more affordable long tail options do exist. However, if you prefer having your load up front like I do, this is one of the best deals on the market. Plus, you can customize it to your liking, and it's welded right here in the United States, supporting a small business. That can't be said about any other e-bike brand, at least that I'm aware of. As someone who rides cargo e-bikes all the time, I appreciate the versatility of the front cargo area, and my kids quickly adapted to being in the front, allowing for more interaction compared to sitting behind or in a trailer. Initially, I was apprehensive about the direct drive motor, but after extensive testing, I have no complaints about its power and really value how quiet it is. Overall, Gnargo e-bikes are well equipped with high quality components, and I especially appreciate the extra large kickstand. The 203mm rotors give extra stopping power, which is especially important on a cargo e-bike. Now, if I were to design my own Gnargo e-bike, of course I'd go with the classic, but I'd also add the monkey bars on the sides and a Thule seat adapter in front for our littlest one. I'd opt for a twist grip throttle over the thumb throttle, and I'd definitely go with a welded rear rack over the bolt-on one to haul even more cargo in the rear. And finally, I'd pick a fun color scheme to make the bike stand out and make it my own. Gnargo has some updates planned for 2025, including a through axle for added strength up front and internal cable routing. There are also some changes I'd like to see Gnargo make. The first one, probably the biggest one, is a move to an internal cadence sensor for better protection rather than the externally mounted one. A torque sensor would be a nice upgrade option as well, but on the current cadence sensor though, and this is more of a personal preference, I'd like to see it current based rather than speed based. That would allow the motor to give you a little or a lot of power depending on your pedal assist level without cutting off at specific speeds. One thing to keep in mind, at least with the Gnargo Classic, is that it's quite long. Though we managed to fit it just barely on our quicker rack, this was a pleasant surprise. The seat is also firm, so I'd consider swapping that out. And remember, if you're planning to buy a Gnargo e-bike, use our code in the description, but also order early. There's a 6-week lead time. They do need to weld your frame together after all. I think I have a new favorite cargo e-bike. Huge kudos to Gnargo for doing something completely different in the e-bike industry. I wish them continued success. They have such a cool product on their hands. If you live or are planning to visit Bentonville, Arkansas, I highly recommend test riding one and meeting the founders, a genuine company aiming to get more people commuting on cargo e-bikes. I can't wait to hear what you think in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.